Thank you all for being here. My name is Seth. I'm the Executive Director of the San Fernando Valley Bar. Really excited about this program and excited to have Maya Shulman here to present this program. Note that this is going to be the first in kind of a series of programs we're going to have every so often. And we'll continue to have kind of regular updates from time to time on this practice area. So with that, I'll introduce Maya Shulman. She represents clients in complex matters of custody, adoption, and entangled divorces in California. She's a strong advocate of out-of-court resolutions. Maya has studied medicine, psychology, and earned a JD in 1999. She's been a family law instructor at Los Angeles Valley College and presently teaches at the University of West Los Angeles Law School. She's licensed in Massachusetts and in California, the Supreme Court of California, the District Court for the Central District of California, and of course, the United States Supreme Court. Maya is a member of the SFVBA Family Law section. That's my favorite part, and I'll leave it with that. If Maya wants to add anything else, feel free. Thanks again for presenting today, Maya.
Of course. Thank you, Seth, and thank you, Linda, and thank you everybody who is spending their lunch hour with us. No need to have any more information from me about me. I'm not that famous, but I am around, have been around. This is one of my most favorite topics to talk about. So we have limited time. I'll do the best I can to give you as much as I can. And I am looking forward to future presentations on this very subject. So why surrogacy? Why California? California is one of the most friendly or friendliest surrogacy states in the union. And because of that, people come to California to engage in surrogacy proceedings and surrogacy family formation. So family formation is not your family law. It's a different animal. It's sui generis, it's very specific, it's also very, very technical. So I urge you to get to know this. It is interesting, it is fairly new, it hadn't been around for a very long time, but the possibilities are endless and very fun to learn. So what is surrogacy and what is not? First of all, I'll give you a preview basically about different types of surrogacy. So there's a gestational surrogacy, where the surrogate who carries the child has no genetic connection to the child. And then you have compensated surrogacy versus altruistic surrogacy, where people do this because they want to help families to have children with no compensation whatsoever. Other than gestational surrogacy, you have traditional surrogacy, where surrogate uses her own egg, and so on and so forth. Because California is very friendly to surrogates and surrogacy procedures, California has extensive legal framework to support it. So we move forward with the slides. If you have questions, please do ask them. What is infertility? The World Health Organization defines infertility as a disease. Because it's a disease, it has certain backup by professionals from different fields. However, you need to know that surrogacy as a business is not regulated in the United States. It is regulated in different countries, but not here domestically. Surrogacy is important for couples who cannot achieve pregnancy after 12 months of unprotected sex. Going forward, you should know that one in every 6 adults between 18 and 45 has fertility issues. So if you look at the worldwide population or the United States population, you will know the numbers are huge. The first ever test tube baby, which is what we call them, was created back in 1978 in the UK. We have come a long way. The next one is the US test tube baby in New Jersey, 1981. and she was subjected to all kinds of mistreatment by media and neighbors and everybody else who did not like that she came about. How do we get here? How did we come to be in the surrogacy universe? In the good old days, things were simple or simpler. That's something that most of us have done, or we adopted, or we decided we did not want to have children. That is a choice. No judgment, but the choices are here. So how many ways are there to make a baby? When I teach this in law school, nobody ever gets this question right. And I advise you to not to try, or maybe you want to play this game. So how many ways do you know of making a baby? Please put your answers in the chat. I'm curious to know. Okay, no takers. So we move on. There's your answer. There are 18 ways to create a baby. Some of them are easy to understand. We've heard about most of them. Some of them get a little more scientific, and I'm happy to explain. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but let's just go along and see what we do know. Easy one, we know this one. The next one is IVF. We've heard about this a lot. Very popular, also expensive. Not everybody can afford it, but it's been around. The success rate, depending on which agency you talk to, goes anywhere from 45% to 90%. Very widely talked about and used. Then you have artificial insemination of mother with donor sperm. Also has been around for a while, also with a high success rate. Then you have artificial insemination with egg and sperm donors using a surrogate mother. This is when we get into the field of surrogacy, not necessarily IVF, but surrogacy. Then a version of it is going to be IVF using egg and sperm of parents. Remember, in surrogacy arena, and the language is important, some lingo I will talk about, or maybe you've heard of and we need to learn, there is a birth mother versus intended parents. The intent in surrogacy is important, and it dominates many, many cases when we get to litigation. Then you have IVF with intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Also popular, also high success rate. When everything else fails, we go to more scientific ways to create children. IVF with frozen embryos. There's a misnomer in the universe when people talk about embryo donations. It's not necessarily the correct term to do it. It is embryo transfer. That's how we talk about when we deal with frozen embryos. There has been a case not too long ago. I'll cite it for you. There was a baby created from an embryo that was frozen for over 45 years. And the baby was born and the baby is healthy. So come to the welcome to the universe of science and medicine and ethics all combined. Then we have IVF with pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. That is a topic in and of itself, a very popular topic, also very controversial topic. What is pre-implantation genetic diagnosis? We now test embryos, but we also test pre-embryonic cells. We have ability today to test for up to 48 genetic diseases when we use GD. So we can test for Down syndrome, we can test for Tay-Sachs, we can test for many more things. It is expensive, but it also very necessary. Some people opt not to do it, but some do. And I suggest that we need to look into this more because it's available, we should use it. So that's one of the IVF versions that is available today. IVF with egg donor. Again, one of the possibilities. Egg collection is something that people look into. Also, we will talk about freezing eggs and freezing sperm. Eggs and sperm do very well in the cryobanks, and we'll talk about that separately today in this presentation also. IVF with sperm donor. Another possibility also can be cryopreserved. And some cryobanks are located close to us in San Fernando Valley. Pre-COVID, I used to be able to take students to cryobanks to let them see how it's done and to show them the facility that preserves genetic material in their freezers, for lack of a better word. Nowadays, after COVID, we cannot do it anymore. So I would point you to documentaries that describe the process. Very fun to see, very scientific, also kind of back to the future, a little scary, but interesting, very interesting to watch. Then you have a version of IVF where we have egg and sperm donor also available. You go to cryobank, you get a selection, you get to choose whether you want your egg to come from a blonde, dark-haired, college-educated athlete. Same goes to sperm donors. If you obtain your genetic material from California, it will be much more expensive versus if you obtain genetic material from places like Kansas or Oklahoma. We can talk about zip code and travel surrogacy separately, but you need to know that California, while it is the most, the friendliest surrogacy state, it is also probably the most expensive surrogacy state in the union. Second to New York. Then we have IVF with surrogate using parents' egg and sperm. Moving on, we have 6 more. IVF with surrogate and egg donor, where absolutely no genetic relation will be between donated genetic material and the baby and the intended parents. IVF with surrogate and sperm donor, again, comes from the cryobank. IVF is surrogate using her egg and sperm from baby's father, so no genetic relation to the surrogate. Then you have IVF with surrogate using egg and sperm donors. Kind of my favorite slide. Very fun. One more, you have cytoplasmic transfer. For those who remember biology and a little anatomy, what we do here, we extract material from the nucleus of the egg and we inject it. So science, medicine, and all that in a petri dish. When I started this, however many years ago, and it's been a few, I looked at it and it's scary. It's too many unknowns for me still today, but the possibilities are really endless. And that is frankly the future. So we have to learn it at some point. And then we go to cloning. It is not 100% accepted in the United States, but it is on the way to being used in the United States. It's more widely used in Europe, not here yet. Also, we talked about regulations in the United States. Surrogacy in the United States is not regulated. What is regulated is legal contracts between surrogates and intended parents. But the industry of surrogacy, not the legal side of it, the industry of surrogacy is not regulated. And this is why we ended up having an octomom, because the doctor decided he was going to transfer 8 embryos and no one said no to him. And he did it. I think he lost his license afterwards, but it's basically wild, wild west when it comes to surrogacy. Doctors do what they want to do. There's no oversight. There's no regulations. Surrogacy is based on recommendations, not regulations. And there's a huge difference. The lawyers, of course, know this. Accountants know this. Lay people don't. And when they come to clinics and they say, I want 5 embryos, some clinics do not say no. And here we are. Now, to give you an idea of the revenue from surrogacy, I'm here to contrast some numbers from different places. So I'm giving you numbers for tobacco revenues, so you know what we're looking at. So tobacco revenues projected to be 8.92 billion in the United States in 2028. Those of us who smoke, we contribute to that, although it's not healthy, but sometimes we do. So those are the numbers. I like you to look at the numbers. 8.92 billion in the US from tobacco. Cannabis, comparison to you. In 2022, it was 3.77 billion revenue, projected to be 53.5 billion by 2027. Why am I talking about cannabis and tobacco? I want to compare and contrast it to surrogacy, and here's the number. Global fertility services market was valued at 34.9 billion in 2024 and is expected to be 80.1 by 2033. So here are the numbers again for dope and cigarettes. And now look at the surrogacy and see where we are. So when I tell you this industry is huge, these are the numbers that support it. It's going to be 80.1 billion US dollars in 2033, and that's not that far away. Unregulated, despite many issues, many confrontational issues, one of the reasons we are talking about things that have to be regulated, we need to talk about health risks. There is talk about financial exploitation scandals where doctors have used their own sperm. There have been a number of cases involving that, heavily litigated, and not stopped because there's not a law, there's no oversight, there's not an agency that demands accountability from the clinics, from the doctors, and from cryobanks. So if we look at the numbers in the US as reported by CDC, and we know CDC stands for, my gosh, it escapes me now, Disease Control, Center for Disease Control. In Illinois, we have 29 clinics. These numbers are current as of end of 2024. California has 83. New York has 46, and Texas has 47. What does it tell us? It tells us that surrogacy is alive and well. It tells us that surrogacy is here to stay. It tells us that surrogacy needs to be learned and it needs to be taught. I am told this is the first ever surrogacy presentation in San Fernando Valley Bar Organization. I know of no other bar associations that have had similar presentations on surrogacy and fertility topics. I know of no law schools in California other than UWLA that teaches the subject of surrogacy and adoption. I know that UCLA teaches fertility and policy, but not fertility as a standalone subject. So this is a subject that is not being discussed a lot, if at all. It's still not a favorite dinner topic conversation, but it is here to stay. So I invite you to maybe learn it, talk about this, and discuss it, and maybe ask questions. Another reason we want to discuss this, especially now with, I know that there are some accountants present today at this presentation, topics like compensation of a surrogate. I don't know if that's a taxable income. And this is a topic that I refer to the accountants to. So that is your job to tell us what we do with that. Surrogates are compensated for necessities of life. They're not compensated for much of anything else, of course. If we talk about surrogates who are employed in California, I've had a case recently where a surrogate commanded and received $100,000 for a surrogacy process. So I don't know if it's taxable to her. I don't know if it's wages. I don't know if it's non-taxable to her. That's where I would go to accountants and they will tell me what to do with this. So the numbers are staggering. If you employ a surrogate in the state of, again, Texas, that surrogacy compensation probably will not exceed maybe $50,000. And if you come to California, you're looking at a surrogate who wants to reside somewhere at a beachfront residence in Malibu. I've had those cases as well. And a surrogate who wants to get maternity clothes from Neiman Marcus. I've had that as well. And in California, it's okay. It happens in California. It gets paid in California. So that is the end of my slideshow. This one. I do have another one if we have time. I would like questions. There's something in the chat. Let me see. Yes, that is correct, Jeremy. Thank you. I have had surrogacy contracts specifically stating that compensation would not be considered taxable, and that was a subject to litigation. So I'm not at liberty to comment on this. It's an ongoing case, but that is a correct point, Jeremy. Thank you. I can't tell you any more than that. So that is something that is not decided 100%, at least that I know of. So I do have another PowerPoint I'm happy to present if we have time. Linda, what do you think?
Oh, we definitely have time. That would be fine.
Okay, so let me stop sharing for a moment. Let me pull that up. Let me see how I can do this. Okay, I'm going to share another PowerPoint. Okay. Can we see the PowerPoint?
Yes. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. No, not that one. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay. So again, that is a comparison between the markets, US surrogacy, cannabis, and tobacco. We did this. So here are the numbers. We did touch it 5 minutes ago, but this is more I'm a visual person. I like graphs and numbers and color codes and all that good stuff. So if you look at this, so surrogacy market in 2024, the valuation is 7.9. There's cannabis and tobacco. Surrogacy, excuse me, one of the things that I did not mention when I started this, surrogacy, especially in California, does not discriminate. It does not discriminate on the basis of race, on the basis of gender, on the basis of marital status, on the basis of income, other than you should be able to pay for it. And if you're capable of able to pay for it, no one is going to ask for your tax returns. That's not what we do. In adoption cases, the court wants to make sure that you're self-supporting and are able to raise the child. In surrogacy cases, we really don't care. If you can afford to pay for the procedures, for medications, and afford to pay the surrogate, we don't care what you make. We don't care where you live. So that's one of the reasons, especially in California, anybody's welcome. So by looking at the numbers, you will see specifically in this slide, if you look at surrogacy, the trajectory is up. The reason it is up is because we have advances in medicine and science that allow us today to make babies, for lack of a better word, where we couldn't do it 10, 15 years ago. Surrogacy itself as an industry has been around for about 40 years in the US. And in these 40 years, we have been able to make advances where we now use stem cells, which are the leftover byproduct of surrogacy, where we create organs from those stem cells. Stem cells are unique. Stem cells from embryos can be taught to be anything. We can teach embryonic stem cells to become almost any organ in the human body. And that's the beauty of it, because embryos, when they're not used, have only three possibilities for going forward. We either destroy them, or we donate them to other humans or couples or single persons, or we use them for research. And in research, again, embryonic stem cells can be taught to become brain cells. They can be taught to become blood cells. They can be taught to become retina cells. They can be taught to become kidneys. They can be taught to become cartilages. So this is the byproduct of surrogacy. And that is one of the reasons surrogacy is going up in numbers and in cost, in California at least. So these are the numbers globally. In 2034, it is projected to become 129.9 billion. And that's in less than 10 years from now, I believe, if I did my math correctly. Again, no regulations for surrogacy, not federally, not in the United States, statewise. The Dobbs case affects surrogacy in the most unpredictable, unexpected way possible. And here how it affects it. The Dobbs case has to do with abortions, right? We know that. What happens in surrogacy cases? which one of you, if anybody, has heard about selective termination? Do we know what that is? If anybody can volunteer to raise your hand, I will know to talk about this and I will know not to talk about this. What is selective termination? Selective reduction. What is it? Anyone? Okay. Selective reduction is when we have multiple embryos transplanted into a woman who's going to carry a child to term. Now you have 5 embryos and all 5 are viable. However, in multi-fetal pregnancy, the goal is to select the best embryos. We cannot determine the best embryos until those embryos are transplanted and implanted, and only then we know which are the best. So how do we choose which of the 5 we keep and which of the 5 we terminate? Who gets to make that decision? And how do we terminate? That is selective reduction. So in some states, selective reduction is considered to be abortion. With the Dobbs case, in some states, abortions are illegal. That impacts surrogacy. That segues into surrogacy tourism, when people cross state lines to go to the state where you can have an abortion. That's why California has the most surrogacy clinics per capita. So how do we terminate a fetus? What do we use? To terminate a fetus, of course, under doctor supervision, no one does it in a basement, hopefully. There's a syringe that has liquid that gets injected into fetus heart that stops heart from beating. What is contained in that syringe? In that syringe contains a liquid that has salt, basic table salt. That is the same concoction that is used for lethal injections for capital punishment. So the next question is going to be, are we committing murder when we do selective termination and selective reduction, or are we practicing surrogacy? Anybody who wants to advocate either point, happy to have that discussion. Those cases are going to go to the United States Supreme Court. It's a matter of time. So selective reduction, Dobbs case, in non-friendly surrogacy states will hinder surrogacy, but not in California. So if you look at this particular slides, you have 2024, Michigan surrogacy ban was overturned. New Parentage Act was effective in 2025. In New York, commercial surrogacy was legalized. New York, one of the most liberal states, I think the term is. In that state, surrogacy was illegal up until about 5 years ago. It was a felony to engage in surrogacy in New York. Now it's not. Connecticut passed the Parentage Act in 2022, allowed gestational surrogacy. Alabama, we know what happens in Alabama. Things are different outside of California. People from Alabama who want to engage in surrogacy come to California or New York at this point. So more regulations did come. Well, that's not surrogacy. In surrogacy, in the market, these are the agencies that are leaders today with the best reputations that I can speak to. Circle Surrogacy, Hatch Fertility, Surrogacy for All, Conceivabilities. These are high success rate surrogacy agencies that have been around for a while. People use them. They come from all over the states. They get Airbnbs, they stay, they engage in surrogacy, and then the babies are born, they get transported to other states before, before the parentage orders are issued. I'm not sure that was the full sentence, and I apologize if it wasn't. So that's an overview of what surrogacy is and what you need to look for. Again, a lot of controversy around it, not a lot of regulation for surrogacy as industry. There's legal regulation for paternity contracts, for surrogacy contracts, and pre-birth orders, especially in California. So California makes it easy to do. Other states don't. And that's pretty much what I have for today. There's time left for questions. I can continue with more slides, but that's where we are.
Great. With any questions, feel free to just unmute yourself and we'll happily get them answered by Maya. Or Seth and I can ask a few questions, I believe. But we like the group to go first, so feel free. We'll see if anyone chimes in.
And I do apologize. I don't realize often that I go fast, and my presentation is pretty much over, but there's much more I can say on the topic. So there's something in the chat. Let me see. Yes, I do believe that. The question is, do you believe there should be more California legislation in this area of law? Absolutely. I do believe that there should be more regulation and legislation, because now it's free for all. Doctors do what they want, clinics do what they want, surrogates command the market, especially in California, especially in New York, and it's unaffordable. One IVF cycle is upwards $60,000. That's 60. Medications alone for IVF are about 10,000. And that's not your typical Rite Aid prescription. It goes to specialty pharmacy. Have you been trained by or worked with Bill Kangle? I know Bill. That's Cam is asking this question. So let me finish the answering question about more regulation. Other countries regulate surrogacy. Other countries are not as expensive as the US. Other countries have higher success rate in surrogacy than US. And other countries have less controversy than the US. So do we need more regulation? I believe we do. I know Bill. I've not been trained by him, but I know him.
Okay. I have a question. Since it is so unregulated, whereas adoption seems much more regulated, I mean, have there been cases where elderly people have actually gone to a surrogacy clinic and hired someone, even though perhaps they're truly not going to live to see the child get into their teen years? Have there been any kind of lawsuits where children are then abandoned because the parents die? And who is looking into this? If someone who's in their 60s decides now they want to start a family and this is the route they go, but they will not be there to really look after this child for the normal rate of time that one would expect. Are there any kind of cases where then children can go back and sue, or it just seems truly like the Wild West?
It is the Wild West. So I have a question back to you. When you say that elderly or older people go to surrogacy clinic, are you talking about going to a cryobank or surrogacy clinic for IVF procedure? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Right, where it's going to be someone else's sperm and egg, and will carry the baby, but then give it to these parents who say it could be in their 70s.
I personally have not heard of a clinic who would do this with parents want to be who are over 60 and plus. Any pregnancy, first of all, where birth mother is over 35 is called a geriatric pregnancy. So we need to know that term, number one. Number two, for sperm donations, the sperm banks will not accept sperm donations from any individual who is over 35.
Right. But if they're using anonymous people, if they're getting it from younger people and they're just, paying someone to then carry it, is that regulated? So it's neither parent's sperm or egg. It's
It's
all
not regulated. It's up to the clinic and the intended parents to do this. It is not regulated, which is why I'm saying it should be, but it's not. It is the ethical question. It's not a legal question. It becomes a question of ethics. Should that clinic allow or take on a 60-year-old person for purpose of procreation? My personal opinion is it should not. There's no law on the books that says either way. So I believe there should be more regulations. There's a question from Seth. At what point do lawyers in California generally get involved with surrogacy-related cases? So there's a statute on the books that no fertility treatment in surrogacy cases should begin unless there's a signed contract delivered to everyone. So there has to be a contract signed, sealed, and delivered before the first fertility treatment begins. That's when surrogacy lawyers get involved. And also by statute, everyone has to have independent legal representation. Surrogate and intended parents have to have legal separate counsel for that surrogacy agreement to be valid. Okay, so that's next question is, can single individuals enter into surrogacy agreements in California? Yes, 100%. Like I said, California does not discriminate on the basis of age, marital status, gender, sexual orientation, and there's no discrimination in surrogacy whatsoever. How do surrogacy issues play out in the subsequent divorce at all, custody, et cetera, et cetera? Great question. So in divorce cases, embryos are considered property in California. Not so in other states. Louisiana, Tennessee, embryos are considered human beings and they get to file their own lawsuits with guardian, of course. But in California, embryos are property. So for family law attorneys, a good takeaway is to ask your prospective clients if they have engaged in fertility treatments and if they have embryos stored somewhere. So embryos have to be dealt with in a divorce case with a separate agreement incorporated into judgments or MSAs. And I very highly recommend that you get a reproductive attorney to look at those agreements as well. After birth, what steps are needed for birth certificates, passports, and any confirmatory adoptions? Same-sex couple. So you can do pre-birth orders for surrogacy cases. Very easy. Judges will sign off on them in very quickly. And then with the pre-birth orders, once the baby is around, then a birth certificate will be issued. Really not difficult. That's the easiest thing of all. Can a surrogate legally keep the baby if she changes her mind? Better not, because that's going to be a whole lot of litigation. That's why we have to have surrogacy contracts signed off by independent counsel for safeguarding. But there's been a whole lot of litigation on these precise issues. Maybe we can do it at the next seminar. Happy to talk about this. Legally, she cannot. But if she changes her mind, she will be in breach of the contract. However, by the time that case reaches court and it's done, the baby is going to be probably 2 or 3 years old. And that's a whole different issue.
And would you say for the surrogacy cases that you see, does everyone have a contract with the surrogate mother? Do the parents, the potential parents, always have a contract before
They
they
have
enter
to.
into this? You have to have a contract with the
You,
mother.
it's non-negotiable. You have to have a contract.
And
You
is that mother
absolutely,
always represented by
she has to
counsel?
be. She has to be. The intended parents will pay for it, but she has to have independent counsel. Absolutely.
So the intended parents are also paying for the opposing counsel.
Correct.
Always. Okay.
They pay for all of it.
And do they choose the opposing counsel or?
They shouldn't,
Right,
because that would be a conflict of interest, and it
right.
also it's going to be seen as duress. Like any other law, like any other litigation, they should not. They can suggest it, but they should not. So,
Okay. And my other question is if it's that much cheaper to do this in Europe than, say, California, and if you go ahead and do it in Europe, what does that do about American citizenship? How do people do that? If they're trying to go through the process in Europe, are there complications? Who handles that?
well, you need to have an immigration attorney on standby, number one. Number two, if the baby is born abroad, you go to the American consulate and you get a birth certificate there. And that, again, if it's a friendly country, separate discussion. But if it's a friendly jurisdiction, friendly to the United States jurisdiction, it should not be difficult. Many people, so the friendliest international surrogacy tourism jurisdiction is India. The least expensive, the friendliest is in India. So that's where people go to this day. Um, and then they go to the consulate in Delhi or Mumbai, and they deal with the legal document preparation. So a lot of it.
Have you handled some of these international cases or most of yours California based?
Most of mine are California based. I've had a few that dealt with surrogacy in India, as a matter of fact. I've had a few. Remember also, most of Europe, surrogacy is illegal. Spain, in Italy, it's illegal. In Italy, it's felony. Also, Italy just passed a new law a few months ago that any Italian national who engages in surrogacy abroad is going to be a felon in Italy. That is how strict that is. And it goes back to Catholicism and religion, and it's a great mix. Love talking about that too. But Spain, Italy, France, surrogacy is illegal. So people go elsewhere to create families.
Okay. And I think Seth has a question in the chat.
What are some common trends you see in surrogacy today, especially California? Will California legislate? I hope California will legislate at some point. I hope it does it soon. Common trends are really the cost. Cost in California in surrogacy is through the roof. And another common trend is that some clinics and some fertility doctors still today fall victim to the demands of doing things they should not be doing. They either transfer too many embryos or they transfer embryos to people who are frankly too old to be transferred embryos to. And they transfer embryos sometimes to people who, for health reasons, should not go through surrogacy. But other than that, California is great. People do this. Remember also, surrogacy is used for posthumous conception. And it's been done in other countries as well with great success. It's been done in Israel, where fallen soldiers had cryopreserved their sperm prior to deployment, and they don't come back, but sperm is there. So families are being created that way. Cancer patients, same thing. I can also recommend to you, and I can give you a link. Maybe I'll give it to Linda and you can get it. Linda can disseminate.
Sure.
There's been, Amazon was one of the first companies in the US that paid their employees to preserve, female employees, I should say, to do egg cryopreservation. And that was good 15 years ago.
Okay, there's another question in the chat. What happens if the contract does not specify how to handle multiple births?
That would not be good. And that would tell me that the contract was not written or looked over by a family formation attorney, because that's it's a must to be included in the surrogacy contract, because if it's not specified, then the doctor, they will be in court. They will be in court on an ex parte basis, because you only have finite number of days to make that decision before embryo proceeds to the next stage and becomes a fetus. And then you only have certain number of days to terminate a fetus before that procedure poses medical risk to the mother. So it's a huge problem. That's the best way I can answer that question. It should not happen, but it probably does, because some lawyers write those contracts and some people just use nowadays ChatGPT. So no go.
And another question, since we're in California, how many companies do you see covering this as kind of an employee, benefit? Do you see more now doing it than you did, say, 5 years ago? I mean, how many people look at that when they go to work for, say, Amazon or one of the bigger companies? And how many companies who are not as big as Amazon are able to cover this kind of cost?
Many more companies do this. We now have insurance mandate in California to provide fertility coverage. It's a huge perk for especially women, because women have a biological clock that is ticking every day, and many more women, not men, many more women today choose to delay their child bearing perspectives, because of economics, because of trying to find the right person, because of politics, because of health issues. So it's a common thing to do. I know for sure Amazon does this. I know public storage does it, believe it or not. I know, uh, I believe military does that as well, actually. So we want more babies. That's the short of it.
It's fascinating. Let me see if there's any other questions. Seth, anything else?
Has there been any cases brought by resulting children related to surrogate mothers? Seems like that could be a thing. Um, I don't know why they would sue their surrogate mothers. They really have no relation to most of them, unless it's a genetic, unless it's a donor. So I don't know why they would sue surrogate mothers. If I'm not sure why that would be a thing, because surrogate mother is not responsible for them financially, emotionally, or otherwise. She's done her thing, and if she left the baby with intended parents, she's out of the picture. So I don't know why they would be suing her.
Is confidentiality covered in the contract if the surrogate mother does not want to be known to the child? Is that a provision that's always in there, or is it kind of wide open?
Not necessarily, because again, the surrogate mother is going to be out of the picture once the child is born. So unless they want to keep the relationship going and maybe send her pictures to let her know how the child is doing, I have not had this in my cases, but I don't see that that is impossible. I think this could be negotiated if that's what they want. I don't see that that's a problem.
Okay.
Because remember, in surrogacy, especially if the surrogate mother donates her egg, she has to provide entire medical information about herself. So that's going to be known. You don't have to guess. She's going to have to undergo testing. She's going to have to undergo all kinds of things. So there's not going to be a surprise about her physical condition.
Okay. And back to the financials of it quickly. When people come to you, do you give them kind of an idea of what certain clinics charge, and so that they then are given choices of where to go, or and how it doesn't seem regulated in terms of the surrogate mom to be, in terms of payment for them? Have you had dealings where you thought you agreed upon one financial price for it, and then it did go up substantially, but you were already into the process and had to go through with it?
I can't regulate the price the clinic charges. I cannot suggest a clinic. The clinic's contract with the surrogate is a whole different contract. That's not, I can read it. I can opine on it. I can recommend that certain provisions be in or out, but I have no say in what happens between the clinic and intended parents and the surrogate. That's not where I can't get involved in that. Can a surrogacy agreement restrict the surrogate's behavior? Absolutely, 100%. A surrogate has to agree that she's not going to have sex for X number of days or months. A surrogate has to agree that she's not going to travel on the plane for a certain time. A surrogate has to agree she's not going to use Clorox in her house for a certain period of days. She has to agree not to do bungee jumping. Absolutely. There's a whole lot of restrictions about what she can and cannot do, and when in pregnancy she cannot do it. So, for example, she cannot be on the plane in the last trimester of the pregnancy. So, all kinds of restrictions are going to be put on her life and on her conduct.
Thank you. I think that does it for our questions. We're just about at one. This was fascinating. I think we just scratched the surface, so we're eager to put on more. So thank you so much. It's
Thank
an
you.
area that many obviously don't have in-depth knowledge of, and you do. So thank you for sharing. Thank you everyone for attending. MCLE certificates will go out later this afternoon. Thank you all and have a good weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.